The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 24. Ready? Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Welcome everyone to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and today I am joined by Byron Morrison, a good friend and author of the best-selling book, Become a Better You. Also a coach helping entrepreneurs become unstoppable in their life, health, and business. Byron, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely a pleasure. So dig into this idea of unstoppable a little bit more. What does unstoppable look like for your clients?
Well, I'm finding with a lot of the clients that are coming to me, they've kind of reached this point in their life. They've had financial success. They're hitting all of these external goals, yet they still feel empty.
Yeah.
They've kind of lost that passion. They're feeling unfulfilled and they've lost that spark in their life. And that kind of causes this area where they stop growing. They stop progressing. They stop feeling good about themselves. So inevitably they lose their confidence. They procrastinate, they overthink, and it strains their health, their relationships, and happiness. So it's all about really getting back to that core of who they truly are, what makes them feel alive, and gives them that passion and purpose back. So that's what unstoppable is for me, kind of feeling like you can do and achieve anything.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I do find, because obviously as part of the podcast and part of the business, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who hit that mid six figures up and past the seven figure mark. And they have this like magic number in their head that once they get past a certain point, like everything's going to be okay, because for so long they've built their entire entrepreneurial life around, hitting those basics of making sure they can pay the bills and, and grow the business and all that good stuff. And finally they get past to a place where, they're not like completely financially free, but they can pay the bills now and not have to worry about that portion. And they think it's going to be like a walk in the park at this point. But then all of these other things that they've been kind of putting off to the side, their health, their wellness, their life goals, they suddenly come creeping back in, I find, in this weird moment. And it gets this sort of unsettling experience that, hey, I thought everything was going to be good at this point. And then suddenly they get to this, I don't know, it's not even a plateau. It feels like it drops off a little bit for them too.
Yeah. I think that's kind of normal human kind of mentality. Like, I think all of us have kind of been guilty of being like, oh, once I reach that income level, I buy that car, I reach this kind of goal, I'll be happy. I'll be able to take time off, spend it with my partner, go on that trip. Yet we reach that goal and then we move on to the next one. We kind of land in the cycle where we repeat the same thing over and over and chase something that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Is that part of the answer, is to just stop for a minute and look backwards on the journey so far and just sort of relish the experience or the progress? Is that part of it?
I think that's definitely an aspect, because I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of us kind of have that difficulty of appreciating wins. We kind of just get to a point where we expect it. So rather than kind of living in the moment, being like, oh, this is amazing, we're like, yeah, it's good. And we move on to the next thing. But I think the other bigger, deeper thing is our kind of goals and what we truly want aren't aligned. So we kind of think that we want that external thing because it's easy. It's easy to be like, oh, I want that bigger car. Because we're hiding from what it actually is inside. And that's why I think it's finding that balance between internal and external to really be like, you know what, this is who I want to become.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So, I mean, fundamentally, we're trading out what we really want for what we think we want, because we're programmed to measure success in materialistic sorts of ways, it seems.
Yeah, you kind of just turn on the TV and any marketing or advertising, it's always telling us we need more. And we kind of see all of these celebrities and like big CEOs and entrepreneurs who have the private planes and the fancy cars. And we're like, oh, I want that life. So we chase some dream, but you don't know what's going on in their world. You don't know if their wife hates them, if their health is deteriorating, if every morning they're getting up thinking, oh, I can't believe this is another day that I have to face. But people kind of only show us what they want us to see.
Right.
I think far too many people have this kind of like almost internal programming where they compare their kind of page one to everyone else's highlight reel and overlooking what they actually need.
Right. Yeah, and I suspect in our social media, Instagram fueled world, it doesn't get much better. I remember when I was traveling a lot internationally for my consulting work, a lot of people thought that was really glamorous. In fact, I was talking about that with someone this morning. I was recalling this moment where, you know, I was had to go to Johannesburg really quickly and flew out there, and there was this opportunity, you know, do you want to stick around and check out the city? And I remembered that I had gotten so, what's the word, cynical, I guess, about everything that I was kind of quoting that line from One Night in Bangkok from the show Chess. Like, if you've seen one stinking polluted city, you've seen another. It was so negative, you know, when everyone else was looking at it like, wow, this is so glamorous. And, you know, what's Prague like? And I'm like, it looks like the inside of a hotel room. So yeah, there's not much there when you're dealing with all the other pressures and stress of your life. So what motivated you to work with entrepreneurs like this and to solve this particular problem? Is there something special or a sort of a mission that's behind this work for you?
Yeah, well, if I kind of take you back kind of a few years, like growing up, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always loved the idea of having my own business, but I never really knew who I was or what I wanted. So I kind of got stuck doing the usual thing, go to university, get a job. And when I next looked, like so much of my life had kind of passed me by, and I found myself in a situation where I was stuck in a job that was killing me. I had no confidence. I was overweight. I had severe anxiety. I was depressed to the point I didn't want to leave the house, and my life was pretty much falling apart. And my dad got cancer. And during his treatment, he had most of his bowel surgically removed. He spent 25 days in ICU. Most of that he was on life support and breathing through a tracheostomy. And that was kind of the wake-up call for me that if I didn't change my own ways, that was going to be me. So I kind of went on this journey to turn my own life around. In between, learned everything I could about nutrition, psychology, mindset, fitness. That was what inspired my book. And from there, I kind of set out on this mission to help other people realize that they need to live and enjoy their lives. Like, my dad was kind of like, luckily still with us today. He got through it, but he was like the prime example of someone who spent their entire life working. He was massively successful, but it was at the expense of his health, his happiness, and other parts of his life. So it's just about getting people to realize that we need to fix that before it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess as in a lot of cases, your journey is your client's journey now.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like I can come into it with a level of empathy that I hated the idea of exercising. I lived on KFC, didn't want to eat healthy, didn't think I had time for any of this. Yeah. And I very much kind of put my personal success and goals at the forefront, not realizing that that was part of the reason why I was miserable, because I was overlooking what was truly important, and why I essentially sabotaged I could have been far more successful, happier, have better relationships if I actually focused on that first.
Yeah. It's fascinating that, you know, we often lose sight of this. I like to say success is the ability to live a life consistent with your priorities. The problem is, of course, that most people don't know how to prioritize very well, me included. And when we think through sort of the priorities and we think about the success in the monetary or the business goals, not only are we losing all these other things, but what I hear you're saying is that by putting our life, our health, our personal goals, and happiness off to the side, we're actually making it harder for us to achieve the business goals too. That there's an optimization step essentially that we're missing out on because we're so solely focused on this narrow goal of financial success.
Exactly. Like you're never going to be able to perform properly, get results, portray yourself properly to clients, or build a business if you've got no energy, if you're barely sleeping, if you constantly have your wife nagging you because your relationship is strained,
Yeah.
if you're thinking about the fact that you're not around for your kids, if you don't feel confident, you don't feel good about yourselves. It's all related,
Sure.
but we kind of leave it until it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I can see that. So let's pivot a bit and talk about how, I mean, what does that transformation look like for people when you work with a client? What kind of a process do you take people through?
Essentially, it's broken down into 4 key steps.
Mm-hmm.
Like step number 1 is really uncovering who they want to become, because what made you who you are today isn't going to help you become who you want to be tomorrow.
Right.
So you really need to get an understanding of who it is you want to become, what's holding you back, what challenges you're facing, where in your life you're unhappy and unfulfilled. Because once we have that clarity, that's when we can reverse engineer it. We can work out what you need to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And then essentially it's taking that, and we set 3 big goals. 1 goal in your fulfillment. So what's really going to make you excited in your work, to make you feel like you're creating an impact and doing something that matters. We set 1 goal in your health. That's going to help you feel energized, give you that kind of revitalized life. And then something in your happiness that's going to get you excited, whether that's being more present with your family, kind of taking up a hobby, doing something you've put off. And then our entire purpose is conquering those 3 goals in 90 days. So it's very much stuff that seemed impossible. Someone's been putting off, failed at in the past.
Yeah.
We find out how to make it a reality. So that's step 1. Step number 2 is getting someone to master their ideal state, which sounds a bit kind of Tony Robbins-y, fluffy, but it's kind of essentially it's shifting someone from a reactive to a proactive state of mind. Because as an entrepreneur, you're basically going through life responding to the world. You're putting out fires, you're dealing with conflicts, you're trying to manage the world around you. And that stacks all of this pressure and expectation to the point where eventually you just go over the edge and your emotions are out of control. So we look at how you can really shift your way of thinking so that you can stay calm, confident, and in control, regardless of what challenges come up. And then from there, the step number 3 is really getting to the root cause of why you might have limiting beliefs, what's happened in your life to get you to take on these stories in your head that put all these mental roadblocks in place that cause you to procrastinate, overthink, doubt yourself, and get held back by fear, and remove them so that you can finally take action on what needs to be done to achieve your goals. And then finally, step number 4 is all about continuous momentum, making sure that you're following through, you're removing those roadblocks, and you're taking action to make sure you actually have that balance between reaching your goals and enjoying your life.
Nice. So, I mean, you start off with the holistic approach at the very beginning because you're setting goals across a number of different areas. And so you're sort of, starting the process off to build that holistic perspective on day one.
Yeah. One of the first things I get people to do is kind of look at the different areas of their life, their health, their relationships, their sleep, their performance, their money, everything, and rank it out of 10. And be like, how do you feel about this current stage in your life?
Right.
It can hurt a little, but what I always say to clients is you can't change the past, but we're going to change the future. So if something's ranking low, that's our focus, and that's how we can start tailoring the goals around it.
Got it. And so how do you work with clients in this kind of a program? So tactically, logistically, are you working with, or what's the setup for how you take people through the process?
Well, with this process for the last 4 years, I've been doing it one-to-one. It's very much kind of been on that basis, that high touch, guiding people. And I feel like I've built up the framework to the point I know exactly what it takes to put someone in, mold it around them, tailor the journey, and get them results. So that's why we're now launching a group-based program, because I feel like when the one-to-one's amazing, but the one thing missing from it is that kind of community where you see other people who are like you, who are having the same struggles, really push you to reach that next level. So that's kind of the next step, which by the time this podcast goes out, it'll be launched, but that's kind of what's coming in the next couple of weeks, which I'm really excited by.
Great. So you're moving now into a more leveraged model in order to handle the growth. That is one thing that, in these kinds of programs, I see a lot of people do is not make that jump to a leveraged model, and they kind of get stuck in a one-on-one scenario, and then there's a limitation, or they have to start to build out an entire coaching team very early on, which can be problematic. The other thing that's interesting, and I wonder if you notice this in your own work, we've had a couple of interviews with a number of folks that are starting to see the benefits of bringing these high-performing entrepreneurs into groups together, where the group dynamic itself is part of the positive momentum, that they keep themselves motivated, that they, when they make commitments to each other, they're motivated, much more motivated to keep them than they would sort of to a one-on-one coach personally. They're much less likely to say, oh, sorry, I didn't get that done this week. And there's like an internal competition to kind of motivate. Are you seeing that dynamic as well?
That's one of the big reasons why I want to shift to the group aspect, because all of the gurus go on about, oh, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend your time with.
Yeah. Right.
But I find with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's pretty lonely and isolating, especially if you're by yourself, or you've got a small team and you can't really share your struggles with others. So that's kind of the emphasis behind bringing together people who are facing the same challenges, who can actually relate with each other and see that they're not alone, and give them a place to kind of vent, support each other, make friends, and build a tribe around it, so that they can then go and create a bigger impact.
Yeah. And I got to ask you your opinion on this, because I know that some of the listeners are probably asking as well. A lot of the work that you're doing and the things that you're talking about can be quite vulnerable to folks. Have you thought about that vulnerability element in a group format? Are there pluses and minuses to getting entrepreneurs to kind of share some of that stuff in a group environment? Do you think there will be less likely, more likely? What's that dynamic do you think it'll look like for your group?
I think with that, the essential thing is from day one, there's got to be a precedent set that this is a judgment-free zone. Everyone's here. It has to be a safe and open environment. And I think that kind of starts with me, and kind of showing that vulnerability right from the get-go. Like, this is what I've struggled with, open up and kind of set the standard. And then as kind of things evolve and people start getting to know each other, and they can see that actually it is okay to share and show that vulnerability, because sometimes that's what you need in order to let it go. You need to really speak about and just kind of let it all out. But then I am kind of building mechanisms into it where if someone's gone through something horrific and they just can't open it, then there will be some one-to-one support where we can go in and we can tackle it. Because in the past, I have worked with clients who've gone through a lot of horrific things in their life, kind of abuse, bullying, kind of things that maybe that's something they won't want to open up. And that's where I can then still give them that level of support. So yeah, I'm excited to have that mixture, but I think the vulnerability thing is going to be key in kind of that transformation.
Yeah. Well, people do say vulnerability begets vulnerability. So that's good. I mean, I think if it starts with you, it starts at the beginning. I do think that sets a really good precedent. It's interesting that they do tend to be, it amazes me still. I don't know why it amazes me, because it's the same in my life as it is probably in everyone else's, but it amazes me still how much trauma and past hurt still continues to guide each and every one of our lives in ways that probably we don't immediately recognize until we're able to reflect it off of someone else who can kind of read the transcript back to us and have us look at it and go, wow, that really is affecting my decision making today. So it's good that you've got an infrastructure and support for those kinds of really emotional moments.
And I think we've all got that baggage. And I think for a lot of us, we don't even realize that it's there. Like, and I think that's why it's so essential to get the right coaches and mentors to help us move past it. Like, on the topic of vulnerability, like I'll like share like that aspect of my life and how that helped me back, because it was only a few years ago when I started working with a coach to really overcome this lack of confidence and fear and everything else, that he got me to realize that the reason why I felt that way went back to when I was a kid. Like at school, I had a really rough time. I was bullied really badly, beaten up every day. I got to the point that I was terrified to go to school. I'd kind of lock myself away in the library so that people couldn't find me. And I thought after I left school, I'd let it go and moved on. But he got me to realize that I still had those same behaviors. When things got too tough, I would hide in a dark room playing PlayStation, hiding from the world. That was why I didn't want to put myself out there. I didn't want to make the right decisions. I didn't feel good about myself, all because of something that happened when I was 14. And it's just amazing how we get these beliefs and experience programmed into us.
Right.
And that's why such a big part of kind of the program is like facing that, getting someone to let go, and just getting them to realize that their past doesn't define them.
You know, as you're telling that, like talking about yourself and that, I can imagine a lot of people who are listening to this or who don't get a chance to listen to this, who are entrepreneurs, might be dealing with or suffering from the aspects or the fallout from their own emotional trauma in the past and not recognize it. What are some of the signs? Like if someone here is not quite self-aware enough about their own behavior to see that they're kind of in their way or keeping themselves back, what are some signs or symptoms, as it were, would you have entrepreneurs kind of looking for that the light might go on for them to go, oh, wow, this actually might be a self-defeating behavior here? What are some of those things have you seen?
Essentially, whenever that voice in your head kicks in and you start to doubt yourself, you feel like a fraud, you wonder whether or not you're good enough, you kind of question your self-worth, that's all because of something in your past that you're still hanging on to. Whether you've got that fear of failure, whether you don't have the confidence to put yourself out there, even as a business owner where you're worried about being judged, you're worried about what your family or friends, or you don't want to go live on video because you're scared about what people are going to respond to, or even in your personal life, like whether you don't want to go to the gym because you're worried other people are going to say something, whether you're pushing away your partner in your relationship because you have a barrier in place where you don't want to let someone in. Anytime you've got something in your way that stops you from going after what you truly want, or you have that negative kind of self-talk, that's a big red flag that something is kind of sabotaging you. And until we get to that root cause of it, it's just going to come up time and time again.
Yeah.
Like probably one of the telltale signs as well that I see in entrepreneurs all the time is perfectionism, which is like they're not trying to be perfect. They're afraid. They're afraid to put themselves out there, to take risks, to really go after it. So, yeah. Great.
No, those are great, great examples. So, Byron, we're out of time, unfortunately. So, and I know you're busy and you've got other things to do. So I appreciate the time that you've taken with us today. But for those people who are listening and want to connect with you and dig into a little bit more of the work that you do, what's a good place for them to start?
Best place, my website, byronmorrison.co.uk, or search for Byron Morrison on Facebook or LinkedIn. They're kind of the two platforms I'm most active on.
Okay, great. And if they want to learn about the work that you do and the steps and the stages, you have any kind of a training that they can participate in?
Yeah, I've actually taken kind of step 2 of the program and the ideal state mastery, and I've put together a free masterclass where I hate all of those webinars where they're like the 3 secrets to do this, and it's all of this fluff, and they tell you all of the stuff that you're like, yeah, but how do I do it? So I was like, do you know what? I want to do something different. So I've essentially taken the entire process that with a client in our first session, I teach them, and I've turned it into a training where I'm just like, do you know what? Let's give someone all of that, see how powerful this truly is. Then they can either go make positive changes in their life, or we can help them with the next step. So,
great.
Yeah.
Great. Excellent.
In the link below, I think.
Yeah, we put the link right below here. So, and then if you're listening to the audio only, if you go to the show notes page, The link will be there as well. Thank you. That's really gracious. And yeah, I agree. There's a lot of webinar training that just doesn't give you any of the information that you need to actually execute on. So that's great that you are having a masterclass in that format. So Byron, thank you very much. Thanks for that amazing offer and for all of the time that you spent with us and the great insight you shared. Really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, our pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for being with us. We know that you're busy. You got a lot of things you could be doing with your time. So thank you very much to invest it with us on the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria. We've been absolutely thrilled that you've joined us here on this episode, and we will see you next time. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.